Hello Harstem. I am a 5400 MMR ZERG Grandmaster. And many Chinese players think I am the strongest amateur ZERG in China. I am facing a 5600 Protoss player, also from China. After I lose many times to him, I think Protoss is just too IMBA. They don't need any micro, they just need to press F2 and A to win. Normally, you just need to do things better than your opponent, make fewer mistakes than your opponent, and you can win the game. But this game doesn't seem to be the case. Every game against Protoss seems to be like this. I believe that in this game, even if Cyril came, he wouldn't defend much better than me in the early and mid game. Facing two oracles harassing for the whole game, I only lost one drone, very late. Facing charged zealot pressure, I also held off the opponent's aggression with acceptable losses. Although it was mainly because of the opponent's mistake, but overall my early game macro should be close to perfect. The only thing I can think of that I was affected by the opponent was that I lost 3 buildings to a void ray, but that was inevitable. After my perfect early and mid game macro, he suddenly one-punched me to death. And my opponent didn't even all in. He had 4 bases and a lot of probes. Even if this punch didn't kill me, he could still go back to his economy and make a stronger punch. If it was because of some mistakes I made that led to the game loss, I wouldn't think Protoss is IMBA. But when you do everything right and you can't find any problems and you still get one-punched by the Protoss, I can't think of any other explanation than IMBA. Or is it that Protoss can make countless mistakes, but ZERG only has the chance to lose 3 overlords? I believe that as a Protoss player, you will try to defend your race, but facing this replay, I believe you can't find any excuse for Protoss not being IMBA. Please tell me, did I have any other major mistakes in my macro, micro, or even transitions? If not, I think you can finally admit that P is IMBA. Tips: before I sent this letter, I searched for him again on the ladder, and he once again used the same build order to easily defeat me. This might be the single most convincing imbalance complaint form that I've read in my entire life. This guy is not only the strongest amateur ZERG in China, according to many other Chinese players, he also played again against the same opponent and lost to the same build once more. His name is Chang'an, plays on the Korean server, and is a 5400 MMR Grandmaster. And he says that Protoss is IMBA. And just based on this imbalance complaint form, I'm kind of feeling like agreeing. But, as always, let's do our due diligence and let's investigate together. Alright, and here we go in our game. It is between Flashbomb, I googled his name, and in the bottom right, Chang'an, the replay submittee. And according to many Chinese players, not just the greatest Chinese ZERG, no, the greatest Chinese amateur ZERG in the entire world. So first of all, I'm honored that the greatest amateur Chinese ZERG sends in this replay, and that he even is aware that I exist. You know you've made it in the world when people in big places, you know, like this, you know, people high up in the world start sending you replays. It feels good, okay? This is also confirmation that I'm on the right track of making big things happen on this channel over here. If people like him care about my opinion, it's like no one has ever called me the greatest Chinese amateurs or before, and at least not that I'm aware of. And it would be possible, but I'm not sure if many other Chinese players think that. I don't think I'm the greatest Chinese amateur ZERG. But let's focus here on the facts, all right? The problem that Chang'an had against Flashbomb was that Protoss can just make very many mistakes. Ooh. Look at that gnarly probe harass over here. You see that? This guy pulled a drone off. That is a sign of weakness, you know that? So pulling off a drone is basically saying, hey, I'm too slow to right click on the mineral patches every single time myself. This is at the highest level. This really is this is showing that you're slower than the opponent. And as this probe harass, honestly, so far is looking very solid. I'm not surprised that someone who has the word flash in his name is very quick, of course. as Flash Bomb here is winning the first 2 minutes. If I were to look at this with from an objective point of view, not knowing the backstory of this guy being one of the top amateur players, I am not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure if I'd say that the Protoss is worse. I think the Protoss played faster. I think the drones didn't mine as much as they should have. Natural also got blocked, but of course you can't help that too much. We have an Adept coming out here, as well as a Stargate for the Protoss player. So we have an exciting little game on our hands. Speed coming out as well. Let's see if build order-wise everything is looking solid here for both players. Splits off a Ling to go for a Scout. I like that personally. This was a weird... this was weird. I don't quite know what happened here. I think what happened here is that... Now, usually I wouldn't do this, right? Usually I'm not going to be very nitpicky on tiny little mistakes. But this guy said that even Serral wouldn't be capable of having a better early game than our man Chang'an over here. Now, I've played quite some games against Serral in my life, and I don't think I've ever seen Serral float 2 larvae 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the game. Look at this. 350, 360, gets the hatchery, queues it up at 28, and then builds the 2 drones to pretend to still build a 30 hatch. This is obviously inefficient. Floating larva is actually really bad in the early game for ZERG, because every couple of seconds you float it, you just lose a bunch of minerals. This is a mistake, and it just slows that he's sloppy. It really just showed the ears, floating 2 larvae again. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird, all right? This is one of those things where it's like, that isn't really necessary at all. It's also not so hard, but okay, it's fine. It's fine. Maybe Protoss at the same time also was making similar mistakes. For example, why is this gateway not doing anything? Well, maybe he only wants 2 adepts, which would be fair. That would actually be okay. Chronos instantly. So far, probe production has been looking solid. He gets probes at like the last second as well to have the maximum amount of money. At like the last second as well. Throws down that gateway, 3rd pylon. Build order out of TOS so far is actually perfect. It actually has been perfect so far. I'm loving it. I really am loving it. Gas mining returns. This is normal, of course, with this build. We have 5 links total, which is also fair. And now there is a void ray that's being produced, as well as a relatively quick 3rd base. Oh, what a huge blunder here by TOS, sending over 2 probes. Ugh. What a mistake. What a mistake. Now I understand what Chang'an was saying in his form now. This Protoss is indeed making blunder upon blunder so far in this game. Sending 2 probes to the 3rd base is of course a complete rookie move. For the people that are not aware, Protoss has the ability to build structures without having to go in them. So with ZERG, if you build a hatchery with a drone, for example, your drone goes in there. So if you want to build, let's say, an extractor and a hatchery, you'll require 2 drones. Now, same thing counts for Terran. If you want to build a command center and a depot, you need 2 SCVs because the SCV goes into the structure to build it. But Protoss has this ability here to build structures with a single probe. So even if you want a pylon and a nexus, you can just plop it down with a single probe. Now, it is very embarrassing here for this Protoss player to not realize that. I mean, he's a Grandmaster player. Surely he should possess this knowledge. I'm starting really seriously here to side with Chang'an. If you have this level of mistakes as a Protoss, that is not okay. That is not okay. I'm also surprised. Oh, I like this actually. So he's gonna send the Overlord across the map first. So many people, their first instinct when they build an Overlord, when they build a Void Ray, is to go and kill the Overlord. That is the sure kill. But he says no. Because the moment I do that, all the other Overlords get pulled back. So he first is going to go for the most, practically the safest Overlord. And he says, hey, if I can clear that one, maybe I can clear another one around the map. Look, he's just scouting with his Oracle over here. That is so sick. That is actually such a nice little move. Moves off creep here with the Queens, and as a result can transfuse this Overlord. This is actually a pretty big blunder. Because now my man is in some serious trouble. Look at it. Look at his supply block over here. That is a serious supply block. And it was going to be a regular supply block. Now it's a serious one. Like my man Bob Geldof called at this point, wanting to host a live aid to help Chang'an out over here. That is how serious this supply block is. Like this is... He could have built 7 Overlords. He's doubling his Overlord count at once. More than doubling. He had 5 before. He's gonna go up to 12. That is not a very tight early game. He's floating 8 larvae. And it's not even because he can't afford building anything after the Overlord... after the Overlord thing. The Overlord event. The event that shall not be named. He's just floating larvae the entire time. And not droning. Now we're getting some roaches. I'm not entirely sure what we're getting roaches against. Because we haven't scouted anything really. It's a triple Stargate unit build, which means that any type of Twilight follow-up is going to be much, much later than usual. So a lot of the time we see like 2 Stargate unit attacks, or sometimes even a 1 Stargate unit Twilight attack. That's going to hit quite tight. This is a wild little Zealot move out. Queen's completely caught off guard. You know what's interesting? Is that I don't think you actually need to defend on this. This is a bad position, by the way. No kiting possible. Completely surrounded. I think this is the worst possible fight. It's still going to be fine. It's just so wild that he only has 62 drones. 7 minutes into the game. And then 8 roaches. Like, this is actually just really poor macro so far. You should have had a way higher drone count defending a triple Stargate unit. Mediocre Twilight attack. Like, this is awful. There's also 0 scouting here, by the way. Completely unaware of the fact that there's a fort base. So, if you've just seen this, though, you just killed like 8, 9 dudes. You just need to drone up. You probably want to get some confirmation, but you still just need to drone up. Oh, he was supply blocked again. Why? Maybe he just has like periods in which he mentally is allowed to build overlords. So like gets supply blocked at like 68 every year, 66 every game, builds 10 of them, then gets supply blocked at like 120 and builds the rest of his overlords. So he's just continuing to build overlords. He's once again floating 12 larvae here. Isn't droning up. Once again, 15 larvae. Injects are looking tight. Nothing else is. He builds 15 drones at once. Kind of a wild move. This late into the next inject already. For a player that is often considered by many other Chinese players to be the greatest Chinese amateur, ZERG. Lurker then going down. I'm not a huge fan usually of straight lurker plays, but it's playable. It's playable. You can definitely go, you know, you can get away with it. It's also not the end of the world, especially if you had a bad early game, which you really did have. The thing is, okay, the thing here is that I like lurker plays if you're behind, but I don't like lurker plays as much when you're ahead. The lurker is kind of a unit that makes the game very calm, and then it allows the player that's behind to kind of come back to a more stable state most of the time. That's what the lurker tends to do. But, so in this actual game, I like the call, but you thought you had the perfect early and mid game, and then you did it. So then I don't like the call. So although it is the correct call, I think it is the wrong call, because your logic is wrong. You know, this is why... you know, when you have your math test, you can't just write out the answer. You can't just gamble 36. And if the answer is actually 36, it doesn't count unless the logic also checks out behind it. The logic is the important part. And it's the same with decisions in StarCraft 2. Although at a tournament, I much rather have the correct answer than the correct logic. Too many times have I lost with brilliant logic, while the other guy just gambling 36, stands there with the trophy and the $100,000 check. But I really do believe that it's important to check your logic. If you think you're ahead, why the hell would be playing a stable lurker game at this point? That makes absolutely no sense in my mind. But let's get back to the game. The spine's going down as well over here. Mr. Ahead sends out a Ling run by. Of course, these Lings have no upgrades, so should be incapable of dealing any damage whatsoever the moment there's even just a single cannon. And indeed, there is a single cannon that's going to stop this Ling run by. Real nice and easy. Third, however, is completely exposed. Perhaps could have sent them there, at least gone in for a cheeky little scout. As we have a Roach Hydra army 93 army supply. I'm surprised how high your supply is. I guess a lot of that is because you have 28 roaches, which tend to inflate supply. They're very cheap and they cost 2 supply. So if you compare the cost to a stalker, which is also 2 supply, the roach is 75.25, the stalker is 125.50. So much more expensive, making the roach a perfect unit for supply inflation. Now, this Archon Immortal attack should not be capable of doing anything whatsoever. You have plenty of creep, you have good vision, easy rotations. Do you have seismic? Not quite. It's close though. And ooh, no, too far back. Okay, these are things where I'd expect this at like diamond level, where the anticipation of what's about to come is, it's not there basically. But really, StarCraft 2 is all about anticipation. So the moment you see a rotation towards this side, you shouldn't just be thinking, oh, I want to hold my natural and third. This ramp is what's important. This ramp is all that really matters at this point, because it gives access to your 5th and to your 3rd base at the same time, and access to all of this creep, which you want to keep alive as well. You know that there's an observer there. So the moment you see this, this is the important area you want to keep. Who gives a crap about this spot right now? No one. You don't even have the range. So you're moving in forward with 2 lurkers in a somewhat okay position, and the rest is too far back, hardly really working whatsoever. At the same time, a Zealot run by comes in. Transfuses aren't really being used here at all against these Zealots. Lurker slightly out of position. So now we need to move towards the left side. Instead, we go and deal with this. Drones should have been pooled. Okay, we have 1 lurker here, which is good. 1 lurker and drone pool. Drones coming in for a flank right now. As at the same time, you're fighting outside of lurker range. With all of your roaches into an army that consists of 5 immortals. You also transferred your drones from the only from a location that was under attack to the only location that was in more danger, which was the 5th base. And you weren't ready for the prism. Now, this isn't looking very good. And I actually think it's okay, it's a GG. Understandable. This is not very good. Now, there's 2 things here that possibly have happened. Okay? Number 1 is that China is in serious trouble. If this guy is truly the best Chinese amateur ZERG player, there is a chance that he also is the only amateur Chinese ZERG player. He's the last man standing, and automatically he wins by default, basically. There is, however, another scenario. There is a scenario in which when Chang'an says many Chinese players, what he actually means is his parents once told him that he's the greatest kid around. You know, it's like, son, I think you're the greatest son in the entire, well, not the entire world, but at least in China, out of the Zergs and the amateur players. And the guy's like, oh, thanks, Dad. That means so much to me. Like, don't worry, son, now go back to beating 5.5k tosses. Oh, no. Yeah, that type of conversation. It might have been had. And then he thought, well, his dad technically is also a Chinese player, plays in Platinum 2, 2 versus 2, sometimes with his little brother or something like that. You know, nice family event. That is a realistic possibility. It's one or the other, because if this is actually the best Chinese amateur ZERG player, we're in trouble all around. All right, we're in trouble all around. Early game, this was not even close to being perfect. Calling this perfect is an insult to the word perfect. It really is. This was god awful. Your supply blocked. You kept missing your larva spawns the entire time, which I don't even understand is possible. Literally, the entire Zerg early game just consists of moving overlords around and holding down the S button, which is select larva, and then pressing down D at a very high pace. Macro, having a great time doing that. That is literally all it did. All it is. If you're 5.5k MMR on the Korean server, you should be capable of using a larva and turning it into a drone within half a second after that stupid larva spawns. It should be faster, but I'm giving you half a second. It took you 5 seconds every now and again. Then on top of that, you forgot that queens can transfuse off creep is a mistake we all can make. I mean, it's only been in the game for what, the past 12 months. So you get supply blocked massively. You build freaking 7 overlords at a time. Then you get supply blocked again, build another 5 overlords. Your drone count at 6 minutes and 30 seconds was similar to the drone count of Cyril at 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Well, that's a bit more, maybe 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Like you're like a minute behind an actual early game. If you ever had played with any benchmarks in your entire life, you would have realized that. So it shows me that you've never actually benchmarked yourself. If you think this was a good early game, you have no clue what a good early game actually looks like. You're gonna get your mind blown, you know? This is like a guy eating potatoes every single day in his life without any seasoning at all, just pure potatoes. I go, oh, potatoes, the greatest meal in the entire world. He's coming into office every day, oh, the greatest dish. My wife cooked something yesterday, you're not gonna believe it, potatoes. And like, with seasoning? No seasoning. I'm gonna introduce this guy to some freaking Korean barbecue food. His mind is gonna explode. Like, mate, watch some Cyril replays. Look at what this guy is doing, okay? With the drone count, with his queen movement, with not losing overlords against a single void ray, and just having drones just all around, scouting as well. Let's not forget about that. My man had legitimately no information about the charged attack. He just blindly built the roaches. Was completely caught off guard as well. He could have had way less units and defended that. He got surrounded perfectly by those zealots out in the open at his fort base, which honestly was great for the toss. Toss, I actually kind of like the way the toss plays. Yeah, he played a little bit brain dead. I don't think the build was great, but I think it's a good catch-all build. If you're playing against a player that is significantly worse than you and you play this build, I think you're going to win 95% of the time. And I think Flashbomb just realized it, like, oh, Chang'an, that guy, isn't he the greatest Chinese amateur Zerg? I think you can take him out with the noob killer. You know, we all have the noob basher build. We all have it. We all know it. If you play, it also is there at every level. You ask like a Diamond 1 player, it's like, hey, you're in the loading screen and you're playing against someone with a platinum portrait. They have this build that they're gonna do, which is the noob basher. You know, they know 100% of the time it's safe, it's solid. They're going to repeat that build freaking 20 times in a row against the same guy. It's the noob basher, all right? Flashbomb used the noob basher on you. And that, my dear friend, makes you the noob because you got bashed. And it also means that Protoss ain't imbalanced, my friend. No, it means that you suck. And that's just the way it is. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy this. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see all of you next time for more and new videos as well. Don't forget, it's not just more videos, but I also create new ones every time. You can always watch back the old ones as well. They're all on the channel. If you want new ones, you have to check for tomorrow, because that's when the new ones come out. All right, ciao, ciao.